Publishing for Profit podcast is brought to you by Ghostwriters & Co. Earn more money by publishing better content and learn how to increase your thought leadership so you can build your brand. Head over to ghostwritersandco.com for more information. That's ghostwritersandco.com. And now, your host, Joel Mark Harris.
Hello and welcome to the Publishing for Profit podcast. This is your host, Joel Mark Harris, and we are on episode number 29 today. We interview Reza Vee, who is the founder and creator of OVOU, which is a smart business card. And he did something very interesting and unique to help promote his startup. And that was he did 100 networking events in 100 days. We talk about the genesis of OVOU, what he learned from doing 100 events in 100 days, and what he's up to today. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Hi, Reza, and welcome to the show. How are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Very welcome. So in Vancouver, you're primarily known for your card reader, but also I want to talk about you did 100 events in 100 days. And so obviously you've talked a lot about that to many different outlets, but I want to know what came out of that surprised you the most.
So it was a great experience doing 100 events in 100 days. I don't know if anybody has done it like that. And going into it, I didn't have a lot of expectation. I was just signing up myself for this journey of learning and, meeting the community. And I was like, if I want to do business here, I better put myself out there. But I was blown away by the response I got. I don't know if you were at the last event, but that 100th event, 250 people showed up. They paid to be part of this product launch, and it meant a lot to me. And then I saw the power and the momentum, the compounding momentum of doing one thing consistently and keeping at it and putting yourself out there. That was the biggest lesson I learned.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about OVOU and what it is, I guess, to start off with, and where did that idea come from, and why did you just decide to pursue it?
So OVOU is a smart business card. We pride ourselves to be the world's smartest business card because even within this new category, if you look at it, there are a number of features that make us stand out. And the idea is you meet someone out in networking, or you meet someone out there and you want your contact information go directly into their phone, but there's no way to do that. Either you have to give them a piece of paper and hope that they will do it and they will enter your contact information, or you manually tell them my number is XYZ 604, whatever. But there wasn't real solution out there. And the thing with these new categories is that usually people don't even think of these problems as a problem because we've accepted this is the way we do things. Think about 15 years ago or 20 years ago, me telling you if we want to go to Italy, we have to call somebody local and go to their house. And you're like, no, you get a hotel. Like that the idea of going to somebody's house is just so foreign. And it is what it is. We have to go get a hotel. So same way with business cards. Every business is like, well, I'm supposed to have a business card. And nobody really took a step back to see, is this even working? Why are we doing this? Yes, for 300 years. And I was blown away when I read the history of business cards. For 300 years, we've been using these pieces of papers. Is it the right tool today? Nobody asked this question. They just automatically start using it. And I was the type of person that I question everything I do. So when I started my small freelancing marketing business, I wasn't convinced to go print business cards. And everybody were telling me that you don't have a business unless you have business cards to give people. And then I started challenging it. I was like, I don't think this is the right tool. Then I took a step back and I was like, philosophically, I was trying to think, what is a business card? What is the objective? And I thought the underlying objective has flaws. The business card is not doing what it's supposed to do. The very basic one is my contact information being saved somewhere safe with you. So when the time comes, you have a way to reach out to me. And the business cards fail on that. 9 out of 10 are thrown away, and the other one ends up in business card graveyard. I call it. It's the drawer. They collect dust, right? So when the time comes, it's easier for you to Google than to reach out to the person that you met a while ago. So all of a sudden, these inefficient interactions that we go out there in the world and we do becomes not fruitful, right? They become a waste. And I'm a firm believer that the power of in person combined with the online, it's the powerhouse. So if you have one person reaching out on LinkedIn and trying to connect with a bunch of people, and the other person going networking and just doing the offline and giving traditional business cards, usually the online one is at scale. I think the power is when the person does both at scale, and OVU lies in that gap of offline and online world.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you because I would always take a backpack. I take my backpack everywhere I go, and what would end up happening is like, I'd clean out my backpack probably once a month, and I'd dump it out, and what would always come out would be like probably like 10 or 15 business cards that would just,
Yeah,
as you said, it was the graveyard of
yeah,
business cards
yeah.
for sure. So what is the meaning of OVOU, the name, and why did you decide? Because I don't know what that means.
So
Uh,
I wish there was a very interesting story behind it to go with it, and I have to come up, I have to see how I can spin it later. But for now, I'm transparent. I chose the name a while ago. I was looking at names that were easy to remember, short enough to remember, and easy to say. URLs and the all the hashtags, everything being available. So it's really difficult. And quickly I learned that anything with a meaning is out the gate. Either their hashtags are taken or you can't compete on SEO. So I started looking at words that don't have a meaning but have a good sound to them and that are short. And 10 days I was at it. This is 2.5 years ago. I landed on this URL that was in an auction for a few $100, and I stole it. I put it aside. I was like, this is a good name, even if I do a marketing agency, if I do a startup, whatever, even if an application, whatever I do, I can attach this name. What I like about meaningless names is that you give it a meaning. So Google didn't have a proper meaning until it became a verb, and it's part of our language now. And my idea was like, instead of having the smartbusinesscard.com, making it, do you have an OVU? I want to share my OVU with you. I wanted to go that direction.
yeah, I think that's great. Another one that comes to mind is Lululemon. No one knows
Yeah,
what that means, right?
yeah.
And now it's a brand that everybody knows. So
And it
I
has a
think,
meaning.
yes. So you grew up in a entrepreneur family. Can you describe what that was like? And was there pressure for you uh, to do something entrepreneurial?
So I grew up. I say on my bio, I'm the third generation entrepreneur because my grandfather, even though I never met him in person, the same year I was born, he passed away. He started from absolutely nothing. He was in the bazaar in Iran. Starting as a help boy. He was 14-year-old helping other stores open, and then slowly he found ways to make money and have a saving, and then he started his own business of selling machinery to other people to start factory in plastic. And that was the rise of plastic during 70s, and he made a fortune in that, and he was the pioneer of plastic industry in Iran. At the time of his death 27 years ago, he had multiple factories, multiple businesses, and that was passed on to my father and my uncles. And growing up, me being one of the youngest grandkids, I grew up with discussions around cost, customer acquisition, efficiency, labor, economic terms, recessions. All these discussions were at the dinner table from with my dad and uncles, my dad and my brother. They were all talking about business. So I naturally gravitated towards it. I remember I was 7 years old. I wanted to be like my dad. I drew my first business card. I give it to people in the family, and I started selling posters. I realized my friends in grade 3 or second grade, they were having posters of cars in their homes. And then I realized I could go down the street and get a print shop to blow up these magazine images to a poster size. And I took it to school with a binder. I clearly remember how delicate I was touching these posters, and I made it look, super valuable, and presenting it to my classmates that, yes, this is $3, this one is $4.50, this one is a rare one. So I was selling posters at that age, and I remember vividly my mom was embarrassed in front of other moms, but my dad was encouraging, was like, yeah, keep at it. And then I was selling other, I don't know, back then CDs were a thing in Iran. It's not really licensed like here. And then I came to Canada, and I remember the first dilemma I had was that these kids at school don't want posters, don't want CDs. What am I going to do? And then I found a hobby in photography, and I started doing photography for equestrians and competitions there. And I was selling videos and photos there. So it was a thing within me, and I never saw myself really going the traditional route of getting a job. And that never even came to my mind. I was like, as a 7-year-old, I could make money. I can figure it out as a 27-year-old. But the pressure was mainly with family business. That's a different dilemma that not that many people experience. And I don't know how many of your audience will relate, but when you have a family business that's done something, especially when it's a third generation. My dad was the person that pursued the education, went back, helped his dad, and got in that, down the route of just joining family business, no question asked. And he was expecting the same for me. And it got me into this dilemma of really tough position. Do I stay here? Do I do what I want to do? Do I go back? And it put me in this situation for 4 or 5 years that I wasn't starting anything here, because I was like, what's the point if I'm going to leave it behind? And I wasn't really fully committing to move over there, because my life is here. I was 14 when I came here. All my life, all my friends, I find it, Vancouver's home. When I go to Iran, it's a little foreign to me. And I eventually took the what do you call it, bite in the bullet, and I went there for 3 months. And I went there a few occasions, but that 3 months was my final one. Let's make a decision. Don't be indecisive. Towards the end, even though I made a new packaging for our production, we had a food manufacturing. I need a new packaging. I was selling a lot over there, but towards the end, I was like, I'm going to regret this. I'm going to go back and do something on my own. And now I'm here.
What did you learn from your entrepreneurial family that you can translate to OVOU? Because I mean, also, like, obviously they're quite different industries,
Yeah.
but I'm sure that there is some learning that you had
Yeah.
that you use today.
So that's a great question, and I've thought about it a lot. What I grew up with, which again, back to when a child learns a language is different than when a 20-year-old tries to learn a language. It's so it's second nature to the person that as a kid they learn it. And to me, business was like that. So I feel like people can learn, but learning from a young age, it's just a different story. I got the fundamentals right, I think, from the family from the get-go, because I see a lot of people in startup that they are so easily distracted by how much money another startup is raising, getting headlines, and it's okay to waste a lot of money and have lots of losses. It's okay. We are trying to grow and become the next Facebook. This toxic mentality works one in a million, but I rather have that sturdy fundamental, right? And when it comes to fundamentals of business, the main things haven't changed for thousands of years. The main things that you're solving a problem, you're adding value, your numbers need to make sense, your costs, your expenses, your revenue, your team need to be excited about it. You have to have a healthy culture and healthy organization. That never changes. Yes, the tech changes and the industry changes. But that fundamental is interesting to me, because I get into talking to a lot of people with startup, and then I get pulled both sides. I'm like, yes, the tech, I like that, but at the same time, I'm gonna stick with my fundamentals. So that has helped. If I didn't have that, I would have jumped in a freemium plan, raise money right off the bat, try to go bigger, go home, make it a huge business, and then it may collapse on its own. I chose this more steady route of, let's figure out the product, let's do trial error. We're not in a hurry. When the right marketing channel shows itself, then I'm happy to pour gasoline on it and get investors involved and grow it. But until then, I'm not really big fan of selling your company too short, and that's what I've seen in startups.
Hmm. I think that's good advice, especially even like for some big startups, we'll call it, um, who are well known. I think that that's definitely good advice for sure. I want to go back to your 100th event,
Yes.
which was at the Vancouver Library. You talked a lot about the need for connection, and obviously, like, we could not, like, back then we could not predicted what would happen with
Yes.
COVID,
Yes.
and
Yes.
not basically going from a bunch of networking events to everything online.
Yes.
And so how do people stay connected through technology when they're not able to meet in person?
Yeah, so it's funny. I had this I had this thought of doing 100 events in 100 days, and I towards the end I was like, it'd be cool to do it in different cities and continue doing it, because when something works, you double down on it. You don't pull back. And then everything with COVID happened, and initially I had the thought of, how about doing 100 virtual events, and people were asking me like, what do we do now? I quickly disliked some of the ways people do online networking. I'm sure it's got a lot better now, but at the beginning, you were just someone sitting in front of a computer for an hour, and you weren't engaged, you weren't participating. And I was like, this Zoom call could have been on a YouTube channel, and I would have watched anytime I wanted. And I didn't like how it was one way. It's a one way content coming in. So I opted in more of a one-on-one, more of a smaller group of Zoom calls, and I quickly resorted into the podcast and content to kind of replace that connection component. Because when you put out content, or in my case, I started a podcast with my friend Itai. The it allows for us to invite guests and have a really cool conversation for 40 minutes, regardless of how many people are watching, because that conversation otherwise would have been over a 10-minute coffee or something, and that replaced it with a much enriched way of connecting. So we leveraged the podcast format a lot, and day one we said, instead of focusing on thousands and millions of views, that will come, but we really use it as a networking tool for us to have cool conversations around topics that we want to talk, and around the guests we want to have. So that's been one way I've done it. The other way is when you put content out in the wild, in the social media, it grabs somebody's attention, they DM you or they contact you, and that's another organic way of connecting. um, Other than that, I'm not a big fan of big Zoom calls, just the fact that, it's one way, it's not engaged. The breakout rooms help. Some people have mastered the way to keep the audience engaged, but otherwise, sometimes you're like, well, I could have opted for YouTube or something like that.
You mentioned content, so I'd like to talk a little bit about how you view content marketing, because I mean, from my perspective, I didn't know much about you, and then you were everywhere. So you obviously did something really amazing. You, I want to say you mastered, the art of content marketing. So can you tell us a little bit how you think about content marketing and how to leverage that?
So of course there are a lot of talks about the tricks and tips and do this and then blow up your content. But before doing any of that, when you take a step back, content is just a way to scale. A lot of people don't know what the heck are they scaling, right? First nail down what is that you want to get exposure on, and then the exposure we can talk about how to do that. For me, I wanted to create a story. I was like, if I go to press release and say, I have this cool startup, and they've heard it all. They've heard hundreds of startups every week that they want press releases, right? And I understood the way media works and the way the media outlets and blogs and all these formats work. They're not doing you a favor. You have to have a story for them that then they chase you after, right? So from the get-go, I wanted to have a story, and the story of a guy who went 100 events in 100 days seemed appropriate for the product I have, for the publicity I wanted. It rightly aligned with my product. Somebody else might have a different story. Once you have a story to tell, then you have to actually deliver on the story. I couldn't have been at home saying I'm going 100 events in 100 days and put videos. I had to actually go out there. I had to actually show up. So the story was built. So a lot of foundation went into it before even putting a piece of content. You can think about it. I had a story. I thought about it. I had a plan to do it. I was actually doing it and executing on it. Only then I realized if I put content online, it would blow up a lot bigger than what could have been. So if I did all of that without actually putting any pieces of content, it would have been forgotten. Only the people at the event would have known about it. But once I put it on LinkedIn, continuously people got familiar. This is the guy. This is the story. I'm following his journey. And believe it or not, the first 60, I didn't have a lot of people, skimming through it and passing by. But then after 60 times on your LinkedIn, you're like regularly seeing this guy, and you want to follow the journey. What happened next? I don't want to miss out. So that was the execution. And then when it comes to other types of contents, what is the underlying story? What are you doing? Think about it about a traveler that posts on Instagram and not traveling. They need to first travel, get to the place, then they can post on Instagram. So for the, let's say, a realtor in town or a mortgage broker or a local business, you need to first have a story that brings value to the audience before you put it on the social media. You can't just put nothing on social media.
So you brand yourself as Reza Vee, which of course brings to mind the famous Gary
Yep.
Vee. Is that more of a happy accident, or do you think of Gary Vee as a mentor of sorts?
I love Gary Vee. I love everything he says, and I followed him on and off, honestly, because it's funny. You get into the rabbit hole of Gary Vee, and then at some point you're like, okay, let me go execute. I don't want to listen more because otherwise it's not gonna happen. And he says it too. He sometimes says, stop watching my videos, go do something. So I've had that 3-4 times that I go into 1 month of Gary Vee or 1 week of Gary Vee, and then all of a sudden I'm like, enough. I'm gonna watch something else. Or go actually do some of these stuff. But what I was saying, the V part, I thought hard on finding something else because I don't want to be not mistaken, but I don't want to be looked at somebody who's following his footsteps. I want to be myself and have my own identity. there was no other way to shorten last name. Like, it's really long and it's hard to pronounce. And then he has a long last name, Vaynerchuk. I think his is easier to pronounce.
Yeah.
Vaynerchuk is even harder. But his starts with V, mine starts with V. So I just adopted that.
So do you look up to him as a mentor of sorts, or like in terms of like, because you're both into social media, you post a lot, um or is that something that you try and steer away from?
No, you can't have enough mentors, honestly. So definitely, he's a great guy to follow. I do get advice on his content, and I hope one day I can, our paths cross and I can meet him in person. But I don't want to. I don't like the idea of putting one particular person on a pedestal. I think there's a lot you can learn from a lot of people. From him, his social media strength is uncanny, and you can learn a lot from him. But there are so many people that you can combine stuff, and honestly, I think the best way to get mentors and get advice is pick and choose what resonates and what works for you. You don't have to mold into becoming the other person. You can be 5% Gary Vee and 2% this and 20% my family and 10% my dad, and you pick and choose and then put it together. Then all of a sudden you are a whole new person with whole new perspective. But definitely in the library of mentors, he's definitely up there. I really like what he's doing.
What advice would you give to people who want to start their own startup?
um it's a very challenging and thrilling experience. So if you are up for it, definitely jump in. Few things I want to make sure people understand before doing something like that, whether startup or your own business, doesn't matter, is that understanding, being self-aware enough that understanding why you're doing it. If it's for the glam and for, it's cool right now, that's not the reason to be in it. And COVID, I think, is wiping out a lot of the fake entrepreneurs that wanted to be an entrepreneur, but they weren't really there for it. When I hear a friend of mine saying, oh, you're working, 7 o'clock or over weekend, and feeling sorry for me that I'm working late hours, they just don't get it. Because it's not that I can't hang out with them, it's I choose not to hang out with them. I choose, my baby, my business over something else. So if you don't have that dedication, thinking about it 24/7 and enjoying it, I truly enjoy working on my business over something else, to the point that my good friends are like, Reza, you've got to force yourself out of the house at least once a week. It's not healthy. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I need once or twice a week push myself out and do something. Otherwise, I'm enjoying it so much. I'm in it, and every challenge is exciting because you want to figure it out. And I don't take a no for an answer. And every time there's a setback, I'm twice as much motivated to go forward. So if you have those drives, all kudos to you and jump on it. But if you are here to have more time and freedom and go traveling, this is not what the media shows it.
Yeah, I definitely think that is a false promise that, yeah, you're gonna have all this time in the world and all this
Yeah.
money and things are just gonna fall in your lap and all.
And
Yeah.
back to your point, what I learned from growing up in a family of entrepreneurs was exactly that, because you get to see what the real deal is. So the media doesn't fool you, because I saw my dad, how he worked late nights. I saw my dad coming home late. I saw my dad talking about these things, being stressed out. And I was lucky being in a family that my mom was supporting the whole thing, telling me, Reza, your dad is, you know, um, tired, and let him rest first before you jump and ask questions or say something. So I totally understood the dynamic. and I didn't have a different picture going into it. And I had the idea of, you've got to work hard, long hours, this is the reward. And I was lucky, I was in a family that really valued creating not only economical value, but having the workers lights on. My dad always stressed out about, there were times that my dad didn't choose to spend money on something, or we even had times that we sold something of our own because my dad was like, Reza, you don't understand, workers, they're having tough times, I want to keep the lights on, my it's my responsibility. So I quickly understood that fundamental, and going into it, I didn't have a different picture in my mind. But unfortunately today, a lot of people, they get fooled with the media, and then they think entrepreneurship, it's completely something else.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think the responsibility of entrepreneurs to their workers is super
Hmm.
important.
Hmm.
And it's something, you're right, that no
Yeah,
one really talks about. But it's, when you hire somebody, you take on not just the person, but you
yeah,
take on their well-being, you take on their family's well-being.
huge,
Yeah,
huge.
you are, like, I feel like you're responsible for their welfare, right? So I don't know
Absolutely.
if you want to comment more about that, or
I personally haven't had the experience of hiring anyone full
Mm,
time, but even the part time people I worked with, I wanted to make sure they love the idea, they're excited about it, and I wanted to give them a promise that I could hold up to, and I take it very seriously, whether it is somebody as an advisor, or a mentor, or investor, or employee, whatever it is. When they get involved in my business, all of a sudden it's my responsibility, and me going. It just makes things. I compare it to driving by yourself in a highway. Alone with no other cars, and if you go 200 kilometers and hit the curb, you just kill yourself. When you have passengers and you have other road users, all of a sudden you're putting everybody in danger. So when I have a passenger, I'm that much more, sensitive about what I do, because it directly affects them.
mm. I want to talk about marketing a little bit.
Yeah.
So for companies that don't have a big budget, who are looking at, maybe the content marketing game, how should they market themselves? And maybe it goes back to what you're telling about the story, about finding their story. But how do you look for that story within that company?
So recently, I talked to Allison from your BNI
Mm,
chapter, and she was on our podcast talking about how marketing is understanding, and it's not about the advertising not working; it's about the underlying message not being the right message. And I cannot agree more on that. I think it's super important to understand your audience and your target market, understand what they're going through. A lot of small business owners, they're copying other players in social media, and I think that's the wrong approach. As soon as you say, why are you doing this on your social media, they point at another profile and they're copying that. I don't think that's a smart move. It takes away from who you are and the authentic page or profile you could be, and also you're undermining your ability to communicate with your audience. When you understand what your audience is going through, you don't have to wait for another company to send an email that we are monitoring COVID and will inform you, for you to copy paste that sentence. You'll be proactive. You're not chasing other people's strategy. And COVID was a great example, because it was up and down and lots of things happening, and any moment things are changing. So there is no benchmark to follow. There is nothing you can go Google how to pivot during COVID. There's nothing you can copy paste from internet. The only thing is your instinct and your understanding of your customer. If you understand what they're going through, what it means for them to have you as a solution or service or product, then you truly understand what to do. As an example, I have a virtual background, not because I don't like to show my background, but I'm using it because of OVOU's new feature, and I'm promoting it. Quickly, we realized people are on Zoom. They're not using physical business cards. But Zoom has downsides of, doing sharing email in the chat box. It just gets lost. So we put a QR code in the background and people are scanning it. We didn't wait for another person to do it and then we go follow. We understood what our audience are going through, and then we acted on it.
Awesome. So you pivoted, not maybe pivot is the wrong word, but transitioned from your 100 events in 100 days to 100 podcasts in 100 days.
100 weeks.
Can you tell us a little bit about that then?
So in those events, I met so many wonderful people like yourself, and one of them was Itai Schefter, and I believe 20th event in, I met this guy, and I met him a few times, and we go for coffee, and he had the idea of, let's do a podcast together. His startup is about connections, and my company is about connections. So we thought about it, and then after the 100th event was done, we sat down and put together the show. We couldn't land on a name we liked, and then I said, I'm doing these 100 series. Let's do more of it. I'm planning to do certainly more 100 series. And I like the number 100. It puts a timeline and a journey to follow, because your brain goes number wise. So we thought 100 days of podcast is a lot, and we can't commit to that. So we did 100 weeks. It's all about the relationships an entrepreneur needs to cultivate. So from your father-son relationship, from your family, all the way to your business relation, doesn't matter, wherever there are two human beings and there is a bonding, connection, relationship happening, we want to dig deeper. How is it formed? How can you make it better? And we talked about different topics. We had the author of Social Capital 2.0 talking about the structure of social capital and how it's formed, all the way to marketing, customer, and whatnot.
And then, so have you thought about what's next after the podcast?
No, because I've got time to think about it. It's been only 6 months. We've got 100 weeks turns to be close to 2 years. So we've got quite a bit of time there. I don't know, but in the meantime, I want to do something myself in the 100 series, either vlogging or short episodes or minute clips, but something on LinkedIn again, because I feel like I left a lot on the table there. I need to get back to the momentum I had. And as soon as COVID is gone, probably next summer, I want to do more events in different cities.
Awesome. So this is a question I ask all my guests, and it is, what is your favorite book? And it could be maybe one that you enjoy reading, maybe you enjoy gifting, but what is maybe some book that has inspired you or changed your outlook in some way?
So I'm personally not a huge book reader. I'm more of the way I consume content is video. I love that format. And I think we put books on a pedestal, but videos are equally as important. And it just depends on what video you pursue. But on videos, I get into rabbit holes of a lot of different things on that nature. But on books, Good to Great is one of my favorite. What's the famous Rich Dad Poor Dad is another one. Something Grow Rich. I'm bad with titles or authors. What is it? Grow Rich and Napoleon.
Oh, is it
Think and Grow Rich?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Those are easy reads and it's great for gifting. But right now, I have a book here. Right now, this is the topic I am fascinated with, social capital.
Nice.
It's a bit heavy. I don't recommend it to just about anyone, but because it's not really about business, it's more about, it talks about it's talking about social connections as a capital, similar to you have money, that's a form of asset. You have land, you have cars or machinery, you have connections. Those are equally valuable, and you can put a dollar value to it. It comes down to who are in your network, how close are you to them, what resources they have, and you can access to those resources. So if my, let's say, uncle has access to a fund, and I call my uncle and I can ask for a favor or whatever, connect me to that fund, so I can raise money or get some grants or whatever it is, you have social capital that gives you economical value. And it talks about how immigrants, or because of long history of different race and whatnot, social capital is not fairly distributed. It's because, you know, you were born, you went to this high school, and then it turns out your friend is a you know, powerful person in business 20 years later, and you have connections like that. It didn't happen by coincidence. It's because you were in the upper class, you went to that private school, and you had that friend, and you grew up with a connections of people who had access to those type of networks. It talks about all of those, and I really like that topic right now.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of, what is it? I'm trying to remember. You're like as rich or as successful as your 5 or 6 closest friends. Do you remember that?
I know that I know the gist of it. I don't know the exact phrase, but 100% I agree.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that as well. So you talked about videos. What videos should we be watching then?
Gary Vee is definitely one of them. And it's funny, you find your person on YouTube, that the person that clicks in your industry and is talking about the latest things, and the moment they try to sell you, it devaluates the relationship you have. So I like Gary Vee because he's not selling courses or anything like that. Allison J. Brand, another person to watch. She's doing more videos nowadays. I enjoy her tidbits on marketing. So it doesn't have to be a highly popular with millions of followers. You just have to find who's the person you want to watch.
Yes, and she just won an award for her rebranding video. Just to give her a bit of a plug there.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah. So Reza, thank you so much for spending the time with me. For people who want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Thank you for having me. Best way is my digital business card, OVOU.me/Reza. That's all my information is there.
Awesome. So yeah, just scan that and you're good to go. Thank you so much, Reza.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Publishing for Profit. Please like and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.